Music is powerful. Every single time you play music, there are so many brain areas that get activated. My auditory cortices, my motor cortices, my memory. Beauty releases dopamine. It activates our reward system. Creativity, why do we pursue it? Cavemen and cave women painted beautiful paintings. We know that there was musical instruments thousands and thousands of years ago. We've always been driven to these artistic approaches. Why is that? I think it's because our brains are attracted to creation of novel things.
Every experience you have is a combination of the remembered past as a set of prediction signals and the sensory present. Your brain is able to combine bits and pieces of past experiences into a novel set of predictions.
Composers, play with the downbeat of a very, very familiar tune that you have, and there's this moment where you're waiting, is it going to come, it's going to come, to make their pieces more appealing, because we know the brain is so good at predicting some rewarding stimulus.
Take a look at this video. I'll bet that in your real life, you've never actually seen electrical towers playing jump rope, but that's what you experience now. Maybe you can hear the electrical towers hit the ground, or maybe you can feel the towers thudding in your chest. Nothing happens in the brain that it doesn't have some biochemical aspect to it. If you can hear the towers hitting the ground, even just a little bit, your brain is literally changing the firing of its own neurons to start to fire in a way that will match the expected incoming sensory signals, so that you hear something that isn't there, to experience something that you've never ever experienced before. The truth is, brains never complete their wiring. The brain can continue to wire itself throughout your entire life.
People of all ages have the capacity for positive growth. So in this episode, we are going to talk about our brain's ability to change and grow so that we can become the best versions of ourselves. This is Brain Health on Masterclass.
Since the time that humans started to have ideas about things and discuss those things, there's been this question about whether or not we are the product of nature or nurture. The answer is, it's a wrong question. A newborn brain is not a miniature adult brain. We have the kind of genes that make it necessary for us to have wiring instructions from the world. We have the kind of nature that requires nurture. An infant is not born being able to see. The visual system in the brain is not complete. The neurons in the brain must receive signals from the retina for the neurons to wire themselves up properly. You have to teach them how to burp. You have to teach them how to nurse. When an infant is born, it's born with many, many, many more connections than it will have when the baby is 2, because there's a lot of pruning going on, meaning that if some connections aren't being used, they'll die back. When I had my daughter and I did all the things that parents do, I kept her warm, I fed her when she needed to be fed, I helped her learn to go to sleep, I talked to her, I read her books. I tuned certain connections by my actions and my words towards her, and I pruned certain connections by not exposing her to certain types of sensory stimulation. I wasn't thinking to myself, I'm giving her wiring instructions for her brain, but in fact, that's exactly what I was doing. Her brain was equipped to learn to predict, but The actual predictions was something that she had to acquire. So for example, children can hear all kinds of sounds from all kinds of languages, but at a certain point they stop being able to hear certain sounds if those sounds are not present in their everyday linguistic environment. There's a requirement that the world, through the surfaces of the body, provide the brain with wiring instructions. And we like to say so it can complete its wiring, but the truth is brains never are static. What we call plasticity in a brain is just the brain continuing to wire itself to the world and to the body as the world and the body change. It's just that in adulthood, it's just slower and harder.
A beautiful example of brain plasticity comes up when we think about stroke. So, for example, in this normal brain, this is the myelinated white matter, and it's nice and homogeneous. Here is a brain that has had a stroke. Can you see the difference? This is the damage that's caused by a typical stroke. And part of the evidence that brain plasticity is happening in all of us is the recovery that you see in most stroke victims, one brain area taking over the functions of another. Some of those axons and some of those neurons that are damaged can be repaired and come back to function. All of that is due to the power of brain plasticity. It's because of this amazing function of positive brain plasticity that we are able to shift our brain health, improving the anatomy, physiology, and function of the brain. No matter what age you are, there has been documented cases of clear brain plasticity in people in their 90s.
Anytime you encounter something you didn't anticipate or you didn't predict, and it's possibly useful in the future, your brain is going to attempt to learn it. And learning is plasticity. The micro-wiring in a network of the brain is very influenced by the environment. So if you're in an enriched environment, your abilities will be very, very, very different than if you are in an impoverished environment. Exposing yourself deliberately to new experiences now, doing novel things now, whether it's by meeting new people or reading new things or traveling to new places or acting in a play or watching a movie, gives your brain the opportunity to learn and therefore predict more flexibly in the future.
It's not doing the same kind of puzzle or the same kind of activity all the time. Learning new things is helpful for the brain.